Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever the heck in the world you are. It is the dynamic duo, the 1-2 punch. If you had a hunch and if you didn't know, you better ask somebody. It's V and CJ in the morning, and we're bringing you the news, the views, and all the information important to you. Check us out, roguenews.com. Follow us on Twitter at Real Rogue News and Rogue News on every single podcasting app known to humanity. We're everywhere you want us to be, plus a bag of chips. And with that being said, CJ, what's crack-a-lacking, my friend?
Hey, V, doing great. Had a great weekend. It was a busy weekend. It was a fun weekend.
I had a great weekend too.
Did you, man? Good,
Yeah,
good.
dude.
Hope our listeners had a great weekend.
I had a great. It was good, man. It was a good Saturday. Chilled out with the fam. I went to the Brazilian steakhouse. I couldn't go to my favorite one, which is Fogo de Chao in the city. Oh, Fogo de Chao. Oh, so good. Anyway, I went to Texas Day Brazil, which it can be hit or miss. It was good. I mean, the sides are always great, which is fantastic. And then we had the fight. We had the Jorge Masvidal and the Nick Diaz fight. Amazing, simply amazing, bro.
Yeah, the entire card was just amazing. So many good fights. It was great to see. Is it not? Is Anderson? Nick Anderson. Eric
Who's
Anderson.
Nick Anderson?
He's the gentleman that fought Johnny Walker. I always forget his name. He fights out of Nick Catone's camp.
Oh, yeah. I forgot his name too. I think it's Anderson, something like that. Yeah, he beat Johnny Walker. Well, rightfully so.
Yeah,
I think Walker was getting a little too cocky for my taste.
he rocked an up and comer, and a lot of people had really envisioned Walker. With his first few wins, he was pretty dominant. But I think Dana nailed it properly in the presser when he said, "Hey, look, it'll get you a couple wins when you're showboating like that, and you're messing around, and it's just kind of his style. But unfortunately, at some point, you're going to get caught." And that's exactly what happened. He got nailed.
Good for him. Hope he got nailed hard. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. So what else did you do, brother?
Just relaxed. Spent some time with family. We went to go watch some live music Friday night, which is always fun. I really like it. Enjoy live music, and then just kick back, man. It was a great weekend. Weather was decent. Really couldn't complain. Hit the gym a couple times, so it was nice.
Awesome, bro. Awesome. Yep. Today is going to be a very interesting day. Interesting week, Siege. Very interesting week. Lots going on. Where do you want to begin, bro? I mean, there's so much crap happening, man.
Well, I went back and I read some of the comments, and just real briefly, I just want to state that I still, to this date, I still support, Dave and Sean. I know a lot of people were pretty upset about, some of the comments I made and everything. And I think in part more of my comments were made just in part because I think it's just such one-sided reporting in regards to, what's happening with this administration. And, you can only cheerlead for so long. And when you don't question like any of the negative stuff or any of the bad stuff potentially, happening, and you don't, they have huge followings to say, hey, you know what, this is a caution flag. We need to look at this. And it's not isolated. There's been a few incidents that I've said, hey, look, you might want to just, share this, whether it was the Trump executive order on vaccines with the Department of Defense kind of greenlighting the manufacturing of those. I mean, that was a big red flag. The entire thing with the GMO food, the greenlighting that, and then, we just received news on Friday that with the greenlighting, the administration greenlighting the militarization of our police department by allowing several $1 million of military grade equipment being sold to local police departments. And I just don't think that's what America does. And if you can't see the writing on the wall, it's not a matter of keeping our police safe. It's a matter of the military industrial complex. And, to keep feeding that and keep pumping that out, giving them the green light to manufacture this products. And then when it's carry over, just either give it to the local police, whatever. And we don't need the military already. Our police are pretty heavy handed at times in regards to matters. But again, those are my personal opinions, and I respect others. But yeah, I still have utmost respect for Dave and Sean. I just think that their reporting has been a bit one sided lately, V.
Yeah. And full disclaimer, CJ and I have our own opinions. So my opinion is not necessarily CJ's opinion, and CJ's opinion is not necessarily my opinion. But on this, it's like, I agree with CJ, and all CJ was saying is that, look, guys, let's not be so, let's be cautious. Let's be optimistic, but let's be cautious. It's basically what CJ is saying. It's like, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's keep our discernment about us. I mean, that's all what CJ was saying. Nothing else, nothing more. I don't think people should take that into some sort of make it bigger than what it is, man. Really, it shouldn't,
Yeah, absolutely. But no, just wanted to say that just real quick to let our listeners know that. And then in terms of what's happening is that there was a great report on South Front, and it really broke down exactly what's happening with the troop movement in Syria as Iraq rejected a building along the western border of Iraq, and it just showed mostly kind of the redeployment where U.S. military now are pretty much guarding the oil fields and staging there, protecting. And I don't know how long that can go, V. That's going to be at some point. It's going to be heading to either conflict or maybe negotiation on how that's going to work out. Obviously you can say yes, they're there to protect it from ISIS getting the oil, it going elsewhere. But at the same time, at some point, that has to go back to Syria. That is not U.S. property. It's not there for us to confiscate, to steal. And I don't like our U.S. military being used as pawns for corporate America. In those interests.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. Absolutely, I absolutely agree with that. And I'm glad you brought this up, because in terms of military industrial complex and what you brought up, it's very vital. It's very it's very poignant. It makes me think a little bit, Siege, because over the weekend I've been doing a lot of thinking. In the midst of me eating such succulent meats from a Brazilian steakhouse, I was also doing a lot of thinking. And one of the things I thought about is a few things. Number one, the fact that it is now out of the bag that the U.S. is in fact controlling Syria's oil refineries. The oil facilities are being controlled by the United States. These refineries are to the north in Deir el-Zor, which is a major point of conflict between the USIS and al-Qaeda versus the Iranians, the Syrian army, as well as the Russians. The other point of contention, mind you, is the issue that when these people, when the terrorist force, when ISIS was completely destroyed, and the Turks decided to throw their name into the hat, and they wanted to come in, and they wanted to go ahead and throw their name into the hat and come in and take on the Kurds and wipe out the Kurds off the face of the planet, which didn't happen. Well, what it did do is allow the Kurds to negotiate with the Syrian government in order for some sort of a integration into Syrian society. Because look, Syria is, prior to this whole entire mess happening, Syria is a beautiful country, a great country, well developed, and there's an opportunity there, and that this will go back to exactly how it is, how it will be. Thank God. And the Kurds could just integrate into Syrian society, because in Syria it's diverse, man. You got Muslims and Christians and Jews and there are some Kurds that are living there, and Assyrians and whatnot, and everybody gets along. Nobody has any problems, contrary to the myth of the crazy Islamist who's willing to cut your throat off and this, that, and the other, and shove Islam down your throat. That doesn't happen in Syria. It doesn't happen in a few places in the Middle East. But then what happened, CJ, during this whole entire pullback of the Kurds, you have the U.S. swoop in, and they took the Syrian oil fields. And I'm glad they did this. You know why, Siege?
What's that, V? Break it down.
I'm glad they did this because right now the entire world can see the naked aggression by the United States. They can now see, it's as clear as day, something, Siege, that you and I and people that are of a like mind as ours have been saying for decades, CJ, at this point, for decades, that we're not out there fighting wars for freedom, but we are out there fighting wars for corporate interests. We're not out there fighting for, to stop these terrorists because we got to fight them there so we don't have to fight them here. We got to hunt them down, bringing them justice. We're not doing any of that. And right now, it's as plain to see that the only objective and the only real objective, as if there was the oil to begin with. And this is oftentimes, CJ, that how many times have you and I went on the air and I would joke about it. Hey, listen, if Syria's biggest export was kumquats and Brussels sprouts, do you think we'd invade them? The answer is no. And this is why every two-bit country that's on the planet Earth, every backwater nation, if you over the weekend have discovered a pool of black gold, like you're one of the Beverly Hillbillies, if you found yourself some gold and or oil and or diamonds and or uranium and or strategic metals or and or any sort of natural resource that Uncle Sam feels fit to want, then my friend, you must absolutely keep silent. You must not mention this discovery nor make it public to the world. Otherwise, you'll be targeted by love bombs. You'll be targeted by drone strikes for freedom. You'll be targeted because the United States might try to bring democracy to your front door. And this is why you should stay quiet. So the beautiful thing that has happened, CJ, the world sees the naked, blatant aggression, and the world sees the absolute fraudulent pretext, the lies, the manipulation, the propaganda. The propaganda is there to see. When those pictures, CJ, of MRAPs with American flags blowing on the back, attached on the back, these MRAPs parked right next to Syrian oil fields, that was it. Look, we as a country have been losing legitimacy at a rapid rate for the last several decades. And now it is coming to a head where the world looks at us like, yo, you guys are out of control. You guys are certified crazy. Somebody needs to bring you guys in. Somebody needs to reel you in. There has to be some sort of semblance of sanity. And when you look in the halls of Congress, and when you look in the halls of the Senate, CJ, you do not see, except for a handful of individuals, there is not one modicum of decency, not one modicum of intellect, not one modicum of common sense, not one modicum of a sound foreign policy. This is the level of insanity that we're in, bro.
Yeah,
it's insane.
V, you nailed it, man. I think that what you just said comes down to everything. And why I say that, V, is because it's a matter that for so many years, the U.S. has been the leaders, right? We were the pace setters. We were the deal makers. And at times that it may have looked like that it was more about, you remember how we were told that we're spreading democracy and about freedom and liberty and all those things. But somewhere along the way, V, we lost our path. We lost our way. And I think that in part is why it's such a variation now, is because, we're transitioning into the followers. We're transitioning into a multipolar world that's going to be built upon different systems, different things that are occurring. And the $1 million question is that will we become isolated, or will we find a way to begin that whole new era of reindustrializing, of new technologies, new industries, getting back into the saddle, an economy driven, by the people, not by the government, not by, federal spending, everything that's occurring with that. And people are having a huge problem with that. People are having a huge difficulty coming to that realization that the world is going on without us. It truly is. Yeah. We may not recognize it because we're so darn polluted with left, right paradigms and dealing with issues here domestically, that we don't see those things occurring. And that's what's happening. And so when you hear people like Marco Rubio, questioning ambassadors about, China's ambitions on the new Silk Road, and and they're looking at it that China's is going in there to take over these areas. They're flooding the countries with debt, and that they're doing that so they can hold them hostage and take over. And what are your actions going to be? That's such an old mindset. And when I see our federal government, I see the people that we're electing, I see more of the same. I don't see any other legislatures that really are trying to change the path, or trying to change things. And shoot, even for the most part, the conservative base is dead. The Tea Party's dead. There's no movement anymore that's based upon that. Everyone's kind of aligned around, look, the deficit just for the first time exceeded 23 trillion. We went past in debt on Friday. Look what's happening. Look, there's no trend. Look at the Democratic Party. It's more of the same. They're all the same, the tax and spend, and there's no difference between in terms of how they're managing the monetary fiscal responsibility that's occurring. And unfortunately, that's, we're going to pay for it in the future, V. And again, the rest of the world is moving on. Things are changing dramatically, and we're just still stuck in that mindset a little about American politics. And I think the rest of the world is kind of looking at us, kind of laughing, saying, gosh, what a dysfunctional group of political leaders. And is that who we want representing the people? I don't want that, V.
No, not at all, man. And the whole entire thing, these morons, like, oh, Russia. And look at that idiot, John Bolton, the maniacal mustache himself, is out there saying, oh, the Russians and the Chinese, they're saddling Africa with so much debt, and this, that, and the other. Putin just the other week forgave Africa African nation that they've lent to $20 billion in aid. 20 billion. And the Chinese are like, yeah, they're also doing the same thing. They're canceling debts. Why? Because they understand that the gain that they're going to get in mutually beneficial trade agreements that do not exploit, that do not harm the nations they do business with, is going to be 10 times, 1,000 times bigger than any sort of a loan or a debt that an African nation might have to these other regional powers. You see, the West cannot think beyond the point of domination. The West cannot let go of its colonialism. We are in a neo-colonial way of thinking when it comes to our foreign policy. People call it a gunboat diplomacy. I call it schizophrenic and psychotic and murderous. That's exactly what it is, a murderous foreign policy. And the only thing that's going to win the world, CJ, the only thing that's going to put an end to this, because look, let me explain something to you guys, okay? It's just not some backwater African country that they're having a neo-colonial view towards. They have a neo-colonial view towards you as well. Why do you think your police forces are militarized? Because they have a neo-colonial view. See, what was happening in the colonial times in the respected states of the West prior to the United States showing up on the scene, prior to the founding fathers saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, prior to the penning of the Declaration of Independence, CJ, what was it like in Europe? What kind of freedoms were available?
Yeah,
it was still, they were still recovering from feudalism. And the only thing that killed feudalism, folks, and this is the craziest thing, CJ, the thing that created the middle class to begin with in Europe was the pneumonic plague. That was Europe's saving grace. These sick, twisted, deviant, heinous, syphilis-filled elitists in Europe, Siege, the only thing that allowed these psychos to relinquish their control was the pneumonic plague, which wiped out the majority of their workforce, and they couldn't find anybody to work or force them to work their land. They say, you want me to work your land, you're going to pay me. All of a sudden, the free market started dictating, and boom, a middle class started growing. But it took even more time because you still didn't have freedom. You still had massive exploitation of the haves versus the have-nots. And it continued until 1776. And here we are today. We have the elites and those that govern us have the same decrepit, obsolete viewpoint, the same view that they view the backwater African country that they choose to exploit. And how do they exploit them, Siege? They give them loans that they can never repay, right? They give them one-sided economic deals, trade deals, what have you. Isn't that the same thing they do to the American public? They saddle you with debt that you can never pay back. Student loans, mortgage, property tax. So you, my friend, are, as a CO would say in the chat room, indentured servants. So you, my friend, are a vassal. And there's no difference between Papua New Guinea being a vassal of the United States, the corporation of the United States, and you. You have vassals everywhere. And that's the biggest problem. There's no difference to how a vassal is treated so long as a vassal remains a vassal. And this is why people are wondering, you have to understand, folks, it's not just the foreign policy that's exploitative. It's the domestic policy as well. And what is the crux of all of this, Siege? What is it? Where does the buck start and end with you? Where does it end? Central banking.
Yep.
How do you kill the state? How do you kill the empire? How do you end neo-feudalism? How do you put an end to the exploitative nature of government versus the people? You kill the dollar. Siege.
Yeah, I mean, so many important things to break it down, V, and I think in part when you take a look at it's the banking system, it is the merger of government and corporations, it is the central bankers' attempt to become in control of everything, and if you look at the events that unfolding right now and the monetary policy, what's happening, you really can't point anywhere in where any type of fiat system is going to survive. And I think that's in part where, you talked last week in terms of the uprisings that are occurring around the globe. I think it's one of those things where people are waking up to that reality that for too long there has been a control group that has been allowed to profit, allowed to get the buyouts, and that whole concept regarding trickle down economics and in theory, I'm sure that we could probably pat ourselves on the back and say, yeah, that's what we thought that was really going to happen, but it didn't, and that control mechanism has led to the destruction of the middle class and where we are today. And that future is probably going to entail that when people laugh about socialism and the idea of the nanny state and the government providing for so many, one could argue that perhaps we're already there, and and that's why I don't have a problem like in terms of like when they talk about debt forgiveness or wiping out student loans or doing those things. Hey, you know what? At least those things would positively impact those at the bottom of the chain versus just giving more money to the central banks and flooding them with additional liquidity that doesn't get lent out that to a select group. It does, and it doesn't go to small business or young entrepreneurs. Those things don't occur anymore, and they control that whole financial mechanism that has really led to the demise of there's startups, and there's several examples of businesses that have been successful. But for the most part, it's allowed these major corporations. Look at the mergers and acquisitions that have occurred the past 15, 20 years. And we're seeing the the breakdown you're seeing, the companies. I mean, how many companies does Disney own now, right? I mean, all these things that are taking place. It's very, where do we go from here? And that's what we all as Americans have to, ask ourselves. And what things are we going to be willing to do? And unfortunately, we have a reactive effect that, that until something directly affects us, we have a tendency not to necessarily get directly involved or care. V.
Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. And that's the attitude, bro. And that's the attitude. Que sera, sera attitude. It's an attitude that's going to lead the West into flames, my friend, because we are being led by brain devoid, brain rotted individuals who are they are the absolute servants of hell, man. It's pretty interesting, Siege. Most people don't realize this, right? Everybody's looking about the multipolar world, the integrated world. Do you remember why did we knock off Gaddafi, bro? What was Gaddafi up to?
Well, I really don't think he wanted a central bank even involved. He wanted, gold-backed currency.
Yeah, absolutely. He was in the process of creating a massive, because you got to understand the winds, the scent of the New Silk Road, and the scent of the opening of the fissures of the wall that was the multipolar Anglo-American power structure was beginning to crack. And then the rest of the world started seeing light at the end of the tunnel. The rest of the world started seeing the very cracks, the very fissures on this monolith of repression. And they said, the rest of the world said, hey, you know what? We're going to start. We know something is coming. We know something's going to happen, but we're going to be prepared. And then Gaddafi began a massive infrastructure project, and he wanted to link. He had what's called the Great River Project, which is going to create a massive waterway across varying African countries, allowing them to take part in trade and in development. I mean, all sorts of wonderful things, CJ. And, that just did not happen, right? And the other thing that occurred at the same time that people don't remember was what really put Assad on the map, on the painted a target on his back, was not only the pipeline deal, the Caspian pipeline deal, but it was a part of a bigger thing. And most people have forgotten this, but Assad had something called the 5 C's strategy. And that was back in 2004. So even back then, at the same time that Gaddafi was doing this, Assad was getting wind of it. Okay? And not only Assad was getting wind of it, the people in Iraq, there were leaders in Iraq, and Iran that was getting wind of it. Even the Turks started getting wind of it. Back in 2004, they knew that there was a change in the air. And this is what Assad said back in 2009. He was on an interview. And he said, and I quote, this is Assad. This is back in 2009, before USIS and Al-Qaeda showed up at his door, and before the idiot, disgusting, filthy, satanic Western media started calling the coup and the armed insurrection against Syria a quote-unquote civil war. The Syrian civil war. There was no civil war. It was a coup. And this is what Assad said. He said, once the economic space between Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and Iran becomes integrated, gee whiz. Now, who does that threaten, CJ? Syria, Turkey, Iraq, Iran. If they economically become linked up, who are the two countries in the Middle East that threatens? The Saudis and the Israelis.
Yep.
He says once they become integrated, we would link the Mediterranean, the Caspian, the Black Sea, and the Persian Gulf. Boom. Imagine that. If they become integrated, they would link the Mediterranean, the Caspian, the Black Sea, and the Persian Gulf. We aren't just important in the Middle East. Once we link these 4 C's, we become the unavoidable intersection of the whole world in investment, transport, and more. Now that sounds like does that sound like the rantings of a psycho Islamist jihadi? Or does that sound like somebody who's an enterprising capitalist who cares about his people?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a brilliant plan, and that's what they hated. That's why they had to oust him.
Yep. And during that time, see, most people don't remember, Assad was out there. He was talking with the Iraqis as they were trying to rebuild their country from freedom, because freedom came to visit them, CJ. And Iraq was trying to get up from underneath all that freedom and democracy that was dumped on top of their heads. And Assad was talking to the Lebanese. He was talking to the Ukrainians. Ukraine, oh my God. Are you seeing a pattern here, folks? He was in talks with Turkey. He was in talks with Romania, Azerbaijan, Iran, Iraq, Lebanon. He was in talks with Libya. He was in talks with the Sudan and with Egypt. All of the countries I just mentioned has some sort of deep state U.S. military intervention happening in any one of those countries. Whether it's an NGO that is creating some sort of a color revolution, or it's an armed insurrection, or it's a military strike, or it's or some sort of a military intervention, something that links back to Exceptional Stand, to the Empire of Chaos, has been going on. You think it's coincidence? There's problems, there's civil wars in Sudan, there's problems in Egypt, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Turkey, the Ukraine. It's amazing. It was in a report that was done by Hussein Askari. He was a Belt and Road Initiative expert. He wrote this. He said, though the BRI, China is offering the rest of the world, is through the BRI, China is offering the rest of the world its know-how, its experience, its technology, backed by $3 trillion financial arsenal. This is a great opportunity for West Asia and Africa to realize the dreams of the post-World War II independence era. Let's just talk about it, folks. The world without Bretton Woods. These dreams that have unfortunately been sabotaged for decades. Go back to my previous post that I did last week, where I talked about if you were an African country, how you were, pardon my French, fucked by the international community. That you were given aid, but you were not allowed to develop a nuclear power plant. You were allowed to develop a solar panel. Think about that. Think about the sabotage after year, decade after decade, famine, hunger, pestilence, genocide. It's amazing, CJ.
It is, and that's where we are. It's that time. It's basically, Trump against the CIA, against the deep state, and it for one person to try to take that on, it just there's just no valid partners there. It to assist with that, and it's it's really a shame. It really is, and perhaps what you said is just so true, that perhaps when the dollar dies, that influence, that corruption, hopefully goes along with it. V.
On the screen right now, this is the newest airport built in China. This is the Danzig Airport. I mean, look at this thing, man. Look at this thing. This is like no other airport on planet Earth, man.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Look at it.
Amazing.
Look at it. Do we have anything even remote like this, Siege?
Not that beautiful. Our airport's pretty darn good, but
Look at this. Look at this airport, folks. My God, I'm at awe. I mean, I am literally at awe. And this is what they're offering the rest of the world. It's not like they're, hey, you know what? The high-speed rail that we're utilizing, it's only going to be for us. No, the same high-speed rail utilized by us, we're going to offer to you. The same technology we have, we're going to offer to you. The same 5G technology that the U.S. bitches about because it's literally a generation or two ahead of anything the U.S. has. Okay? We're going to offer it to you. And because the U.S. saying, like, we have backdoors and spying, well, here's the source code. We make the whole entire thing open. You can look at it yourself. It's no secret. Here you go. We just want you to catch up to the rest of us. Look, the Chinese ain't perfect. I'm not a big fan of the CCP. But what they're offering the world is far better than us. They set up stuff like this all throughout the world. What do we set up, CJ? What do we set up in Africa? AFRICOM. What do we set up in Europe? NATO. What's our solution to help out Oceania with the Australians and whatnot? Oh, well, military bases. If we can't sell you weapons or blow you up, we don't want you. So you don't see. They can't do. Look, they can't even build 2 miles of subway lines in New York City. Forget about making anything like this. Look at this. And this is what happens, folks, when you actually teach your students science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. You create shit like this. This is what you create. But what do we teach our students? There's 100 genders, how to put a condom on a banana, and
every
you think our future generations are going to be making stuff like this, CJ?
Huh. No, I don't think they're challenged enough. No. Mm-mm.
Look at this. And this is, dude, China and India crack 500,000 engineers and scientists per year. 500,000. And we held for nothing but war and death, my friend. War and death. Go ahead, Siege.
Great breakdown, V. It's and I think that the answer's got to be how, the question has to be how do we correct this ship? How do we get things, transition? And V, I think in terms of future generations, how do we reset that? How do we restart that? And there's got to be something figured out on how can we influence the future generation to understand how the system needs to be reversed and changed. And we need more messages like that. And instead of just all this, political hoopla happening here. I mean, shoot, even if Trump gets elected, he has 4 more years, remaining. What can be done during that time period, and who's the backfill? Who, right now there's not a whole lot of people that really excite me to think of potentially what that's going to look like. But that's the conversation I think that we need to start having. Is looking forward to other solutions and how do we change that influence, get more people to understand this. And what you covered today is just so important because it's not talking about this whole left-right paradigm and
horseshit
and just everything that's occurring. The future is happening now, and we're stuck here domestically in the U.S.
The West
about this whole crazy thing that's happening with this bogus impeachment. But yeah, great breakdown, V. Very, very cool stuff that they're doing there in China.
Yeah, the whole thing is this, man. It's going to be like this because why? We've lost the culture. I don't want to hear any bullshit about good guys, bad guys, all this other horse shit. Like, seriously? I want people to put on a critical thinking brain and really think to themselves exactly what is the 15 and 20-year prospects for this country. Dude, I don't see shit past 5 years. The crazy thing is, Siege, I have like 900 years of economic metrics and data underneath my fingertips. I literally do. I'm not bullshitting you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been on the money, so I'm not 100%. Nobody's God. Nobody has that crystal ball. But damn it, man, I've been pretty damn awesome when it comes to calling out stuff. Sorry, I have been. Okay? But, when it comes, where my data stops, CJ? Like, literally, all my trends, all the stuff that I put in to really calculate for the future. Dude, I don't see, everything just stops at 5 years. I don't see nothing past 5 years. I see collapse. That's not the kind of economic class that people think about.
Yep.
People need to have a real hard question because look, and it comes back to this: unless we win the culture, then all is lost, man.
Well said, V.
Yep. And with that, folks, check us out, mycbdedibles.com. Make sure you go there, get the foods, support us, and also check out the Patreon. Okay, the Patreon's there as well. Links are in the description box. I put the links in this time. So make sure you go there, mycbdedibles.com. Whether if you want all sorts of deliciousness, whether it is yumminesses for your foods or for your doggy or whatnot, then you need to get there. You need to go there. You need to order it. mycbdedibles.com. With that being said, this is the Gorilla and CJ. We're over and out.